All right, so first start with questions. Does everybody know what's going on, how it's going on? Most of you are starting to go out in the field, starting to do that process. Anybody have any questions? Everybody feels in a pretty good spot? I don't know the answer to that. Kristen isn't. Kristen's a tough one, I think. Well, you haven't yet either? That's interesting. Math, and you haven't found one yet either. She'll get it soon. Yeah, don't worry. Yeah, she might, yes. Yeah. Wait for the drum roll. There you go. Everybody else has made contact with their person? And have you heard back from them? Good. That's the key. Sometimes making that contact happens pretty easily, and then doing the other side of that doesn't always work out so well. All right? Anything else?
Yeah, so, like, I start tomorrow. Do I need to bring anything? Like, is there observation forms that we need to fill out while we're...
If you remember, there's some observation forms that you can use as a guide in D2L underneath 314. But don't feel like you have to follow that. Okay? What we don't want you to do is be a passive observer. So you should be asking questions, or you should be thinking about those things that are happening. So be as active as possible with that. Yeah. Good question. Anything else?
When you go out in the field, what should we bring besides the observation farm?
That's it. Yep. Unless you're teaching, and then take something to record with. Yeah. You know, take your, as if you were going to school. You know, I take my bag everywhere I go. So I've always got my computer, I've always got my bag, I've always got a book to read, those kinds of things. So I've always got, it's cold, isn't it? Yeah. So, you know, I like so, you know, just take things along just in case. Okay? If you're going to Brookings, don't forget you have to fill out that volunteer sheet. And do that, take that to the office first. And your name tags. Did everybody get their name tags finally? Talk to Linda. Yeah. Anything else? Everybody's pretty good? Did everybody get their lesson plan made? Was it easy? No. Because you figured out
Start over like 3 times.
that it didn't work. Did you start over because it didn't work, or did you start over because of some other reason?
This didn't work, and then I fixed the whole thing and figured out that it still didn't work, no matter what I was doing right.
It was a numbers thing with him. You couldn't kill people off in the right proportion, right?
Exactly.
There you go. Doesn't do it as your
It makes sense.
It does. Everybody else? All right. We're going to up the ante a little bit on this, because making the lesson plan, believe it or not, is really the easiest part you can do. All right? Now let's align some of those standards to it. When you're doing standards, what are you aligning a standard to? The lesson? Any particular part of the lesson? Just the whole lesson itself? What the students actually do, so the activities that they do? Other thoughts?
Here's some of the assessments.
Your assessments. Tia says the assessments. That's a good answer. You align your standards to the assessments. Anybody know why? I love Mondays.
If they don't want to do standards, and then they don't want to.
There you go. All right, so let's look at this really quickly here. We'll show you a couple of examples, okay? So, your learning objectives. How many of you have learning objectives down? Bailey, can you hear? Awesome. How many of you have learning objectives? Look at your learning objectives. Are they active verbs? Are the students doing something that is measurable? Are they understanding? Are they learning? Those are 2 verbs that we're going to throw away from your vocab. Are they creating? Are they drawing? Are they writing? Those are the things that we're going to want those students to be able to do. And we'll get into a lot of detail with this, all right? So the first thing that you need to do is you need to have a measurable learning objective, something that can literally be measured. Can you measure understanding? In no way, shape, or form can you measure somebody's understanding of something. You can measure and you can guess based upon what they do as to whether or not they understand it. But if I ask you to, if my learning objective is that you understand how to write a 12-page paper with APA citations, research, those kinds of things, will I ever know if you understood how to do it? By you turning one in? No. And that's the key to objectives. Objectives are stinkers. Because if we sit down to write objectives, look at the objectives that you wrote. What are the verbs? Tell me some of your verbs. Apply, present, evaluate, analyze. What are some other good ones? Those are the three you use.
Utilize.
Huh? Utilize. Think critically. How are you going to measure that? It's a tough one. It is a tough one. All right? So the first thing you have to do is you have to have a learning objective that starts with something that can be measured. If it can't be measured, then you have to start all the way over at the beginning. All right? Then you have to develop an assessment that aligns to that particular objective. And this is where an awful lot of times our lesson plans go awry. What we'll do is we will not develop an assessment that does that right there. So we will have them do something that's going to their objective, and then we'll give them an exit ticket and say we're assessing their understanding. No, we're not. Not yet. All right? Then we need to think of those as skills that they want to do. All right? All right, let's give you an example. This is our learning objective. Describe the 7 steps of the research process when writing a paper. Our assessment is to write a paper using the 7 steps of the research process. Good, bad, indifferent, problems, kudos, get the heck out of teaching. Where are we at with this? What's very broad?
So you can use the 7 steps, but what if they don't want to use them the same way? I never know what the 7 steps are, I guess.
So, you know, the pre-writing, the brainstorming, the actual research, those kinds of things are the steps, right? Broad is a good thing to look at. What else is going on with this? Go ahead, Tia.
When you're saying describe the 7 steps, it doesn't mean that they know necessarily how to use them correctly or vice versa. Like they can maybe fake it and write a paper, but it doesn't mean they did the steps correctly.
Okay. So if I'm asking them to describe, they may not know how to apply those. Okay? Somebody had their hand up back here. No? Other thoughts? Go ahead.
I know it's just a learning objective and it says it's pretty boring.
Not the greatest lesson in the world. Don't get me wrong there, right? Yes, boring as all get out. It is my fault. What else is wrong with that? Go ahead.
Write a paper, it's too vague. It needs to have at least some sort of outline because you get students that will write like a paragraph and then you get students that will write like 15 pages.
Good. There's something really, really big and really obvious. It's kind of like you're doing Algebra 1 in a calculus class. This is kind of what's going on here. That's why nobody's seeing it just yet. What are we doing? What's my objective? What's my goal for them to be able to do at the end? Describe. What am I having them do?
Use them.
Write them and use them, not describe them. So my objective is having them describe them, but my goal is a much greater Bloom's taxonomy skill. This one right over here has an application to it, which is a higher taxonomy. That one over there, that's just knowledge-based. I want them to describe it, but over here I'm asking them to up that ante a lot and go from describing to using. That's a huge leap. Am I going to be assessing anything that I've set as an objective there? No. Those 2 verbs should almost always be the same. Almost always. I won't use absolutes. Not yet. All right. So this would be better. Describe the 7 steps of the research process in writing a paper. Their assessment may be creating a poster describing the 7 steps. I still agree with Maria. Still too vague. Martha says that too, right? And this isn't the greatest lesson in the world. I mean, who really wants to do this, right? So you know what's going to happen. I'm going to be describing those 7 things in class. At the end of it all, they're going to write a poster and put up what I said and put it on the wall. Not the greatest lesson in the world, right? But at least this assessment does exactly what that objective says I'm going to be measuring. All right? Align the objective to the assessment and the assessment to the standard. You all have your standards with you? Yes? No? They're all available online. All right, very cool. All right, describe the 7 steps of the research process when writing a paper. They're going to create a poster describing the 7 steps. The next step then is to align to a standard. Do we have English in here? All right, so here we go. There are no standards that have the students doing that. None. There isn't a single standard K through 12 that says that those students need to be able to describe the 7 steps of the research process. What does that mean about my objective, my assessment, and my lesson for today? You can say it. It's not. It's not even a good place to start. If there's no standard for what I'm teaching that day, why am I teaching it?
The students make it more.
What does that mean? She said the students will get more out of it than I will. Keep on.
I mean, the students, maybe not necessarily with this 7 steps of the research process, but sometimes you have to create a lesson plan where the students are going to learn more and they're going to get more out of it, even though it doesn't follow you or what you need to comply with.
Is it a stepping stone?
I don't know what you guys tell me. Stepping stone, Tia.
And teaching the kids how to learn more efficiently and giving them steps to be better learners.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts? Come on, you all have thoughts. Even if they're not good thoughts, or they might be good thoughts.
Well, like, for when I teach kindergartners who first started, like, introduction, saying the name thing, I don't know their name, and that was basically just to warm up the class and get them used to, so it's like, they'll always teach to an objective, because the more important to focus on what the student needs, like, you need to treat them as individuals and know each student before moving on with an actual lesson, so like, you're not always going teaching to the standard.
Did you assess it?
Yeah, I guess I did.
Did you align it to a standard?
I didn't look at the standards.
You probably could in kindergarten, right?
Yeah.
Here's the deal with this. All too often we will start with a standard. And we will work the class period that way. We're teaching you to do that a little backwards now. We want you to start with that passion with this. Stepping stones, obviously. Do they need to have this background information? Obviously. But are we assessing it? Are we formally assessing it? Are we summatively assessing it? And or are we aligning it to a standard? What do you think? You want to? No.
What is happening?
Don't align these. Don't assess these, all right? So, let's go where we would go with this, all right? Let's change the objective. Let's not change the objective. Oh yeah, we're gonna do that too. Use the 7 steps of the research process to evaluate the validity of free energy. The assessment now is to create an argument defending or negating free energy's validity. What do you think? Is this one going to align? Got a guess? Dun, 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 dun. It not only aligns once, it aligns at least 3 times. What's the difference between this and this?
You're actually applying 7 steps rather than just defining them.
You're applying it, you're not just defining them. What else? Maria, go back to your comment. Do you want to do this one?
Yeah.
How come?
Because it makes the students, they're active and they're thinking critically. And like, they're not just sitting there, they're using their mind in like a very interesting way.
Do you as the teacher need to do those stepping stones previous? Do they need to get from here to this place before you get here? Yes. Here's what we're trying to save you some time doing. First year teachers are going to sit down and they're going to do something very similar to this. And they're going to do this on a regular basis. And they're going to spend a lot of time for their principals aligning standards and doing these types of lesson plans. Does that need to be aligned? There's nothing to align it to. And so what we end up doing is we end up having this false alignment. These are the ones that count. Now, when did these come into play? Did they come in first or last? Why?
Because you already had a great lesson planned out and then you found a way to apply it after the fact to something that they needed to learn or research.
Kind of true. How many of you have done lesson plans already where you've started with a standard? And then you built the lesson plan from there. So how many standards do you get through in a year? Because you're focused on that one standard. If I had started with this standard right here, conduct short as well as more sustained research projects to answer a question, yada, yada, yada. Then at the end of the year, when I look back at all of the standards that I have covered, I'm missing these 2. How come? Because we did this one, we never got back to this one, we're running out of time, it's homecoming week, now it's Easter, now it's track, and we didn't get to this because we started with the standard. What happens when you walk into the grocery store without a list? If you're like me, you come out with everything except what? The one thing you needed, right? When we go in with one thing in mind, we only think about that one thing in mind. Here, we've thought about a great big thing, and then we've applied it to a lot of different things. Now, not only can I do English here, what other subject areas can I apply here? Do you all know what free energy is? Free energy is the creation of electricity without like stuff going on. It can't happen. You don't have free energy. It doesn't work. So, science, what else? Go ahead.
Literature and technology.
Absolutely. Literature, technology, what else?
I think probably a little history in there.
Absolutely. What else could we get in there? Come on. Science, math, obviously math, political science, government, business law, psychology, because, you know, we do this one. This is specifically one that we do with 7th graders. And the 7th graders, they will defend free energy until their deathbed. Because that's what they get there. Why would they grab a hold of something that they and they'll even stand up and tell you, this can't really happen, but I think it will. This guy told me on the internet it could. And then they will defend that to the hilt. All right. So here's your goal, and this is what you're going to work on today in class. I like to do it this way. I like to put them so that they are sideways from each other. This is my brain thinking, not yours. So you get to decide how your brain thinks. What I want you to do is I want you to figure out what your objective is, what your assessment is, and then I want you to try to align a standard to that. And if it doesn't work, that's okay, right? Because that's where we're starting right now. So find your objectives, find your assessment that specifically does that objective, and then align a standard to it. Now, what a lot of people are going to end up with is this. They might have an objective with no assessment, and they might think that they have a standard. Or you might have an assessment, but it's not linked to anything, and it doesn't have a standard. That's okay, because I want you to start now dissecting the lesson plan that you've developed to see where we're at with this, all right? Is that clear as mud? You're welcome to do this in your groups if you want to. If you like to work alone, you can do that too. Easy? Do you understand the goal? Tanner's like, my lesson plan doesn't work. What do you think? All right, go. Let's work on this. Let's get some stuff done. Are you all going to get into your groups? Is that your thought here? Because I'm going to move Bailey wherever her group is.
I don't like it. Are you? I'm not coming. It's settled.
Sure. Bailey's got it. Knock it up. That's what I thought.
Feeling cold. Let's really close my face again.
That's okay. You look good on camera. All right, Miss Ashley.
Well, with my major, it was supposed to like I counted
The thing is, like, in my work with our family, I think I couldn't necessarily try to make a whole lot out of I think so. Like it was to be like because yeah, if I included everything, I can even include everything that we do in that. So that's what we're doing. I'm just so right now, I took that.
She wanted the whole thing in there,
Very specific.
and then
And that's going to be your objective. Your
So now
assessment
we're
is
trying
going
to bring it together.
now what standard is that? Let me know who needs help. Hi.
So right now, do you want us to be looking at the big picture for our whole entire lesson?
No,
Or
just
break
the
down?
individuals. Just the individuals. But help each other do that because this is different. This is not just necessarily applying these great big standards to a lesson, which is where we kind of start when we're little teachers, right? That's where a lot of old teachers still are too. And we want you to start looking at this in a very different way and only aligning and assessing those things that are alignable and measurable. Okay? So help each other do this. So what's your objectives?
I took it and put it in for
Cool,
everybody,
awesome.
across the whole thing.
Well, good.
And I'm saying I put it in for my major, but where I struggle with is creating this actual time slot because what I about it, it was more, since I was like more facts, I don't know if I can really the whole thing, but it was like, I can apply these standards to this lesson.
Alright, so
This lesson doesn't really fully apply.
So I would start with this one right here. And think about it. This is your facts, right? This right here is putting the recipe together. This is planning to get everything for the recipe. And then your assessment is how it tastes at the end. Think about it in terms of that. So focus on these things rather than this right now. Okay, this is what I have right now. This, yeah, focus on these things.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you have right now?
Oh, sorry, she was playing at like this part instead of like,
Ours was more like a
like,
Oh,
like
okay.
actually outside for everything.
because we put it together like, oh, so.
Yeah, and that's what I have
we
for,
listen, we were-
specifically what I have, my daily objective is just apply time management effectively, present the solution successfully in front of class,
Alright, so what's
evaluate
your
your
goal?
collaboration,
Even if
I
it's
know we talked about when it's done, we have to evaluate, they have to evaluate each other just so I can get that extra standard in there.
Nope, because they're never gonna master it. They're gonna be 92 years old and they don't be struggling with that.
Would I use, or, as an objective, is to incorporate the knowledge and research of what we've learned
I am
into
really
skating.
sorry, but I heard like half of that.
It's when you want walking out the door now.
Do I need to do like a lesson like she lived at Vermont as well?
I think we have to do it each of our content.
As a whole, personally, it doesn't matter.
Personally, I want them to ask themselves how they are related to history, like how can we connect history with art?
Okay, now let's make that measurable. How are you gonna do that?
We had them incorporate some piece of.
Yeah, we have them incorporated, so is that?
There you go. There you go. Start there. Okay? So how are you going to assess that?
When they talk.
How are you gonna know that they know that you're going to have wanted them to work?
What do you
Well,
want?
part of our requirement for this kid is to look at
There's like a
template.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Us, we need to know like what about that one next to what they're talking
So how
about.
are you gonna get them to show you that they know that?
For this kid.
What are you gonna do
Yeah.
as a kid?
Structure,
Talk about making
Show
sure
me, you're not gonna talk about it. It's gonna talk about a lot of things. We're gonna talk about
So is that
specific.
your skip?
I like the word show much better. What are they gonna show you?
Show us the image.
And do what with the image?
Or what if we? See, that's why I'm confused, is it everything would also do research, you have to also help you.
Yeah.
You're getting closer, you're getting closer.
Really
See, I'm talking. What's the first verb that you use in your objective? And what are they gonna do in their skin? You're gonna know. And now, here's the key, how are you going to, come up to the standard? This image. I gotta turn off the recording up here.